6,000 girls a day are cut. That was the last thing we heard. And it's hard. It's really hard to listen to that. It's really hard to watch it. It's harder to comprehend it, especially sitting here in beautiful Copenhagen. And I think what makes it harder are two things. Firstly, that those figures have been updated and that actually it's 8,000 girls a day who are going through FGM. And secondly, for me, it's actually that it's the truth. You know, we're so desensitized, we see so much violence, we see so much entertainment that's horror movies, and actually, when you see these scenes, and I want to look away, this is my life, I do this now, I don't know how you must feel, but this is the truth and it's what happens. So thank you to Nancy for producing a film that tells us the truth. I spent 18 years in the private sector, and I went to volunteer in Ethiopia. And I had no idea that 3 million girls a year were being cut. I had no idea that so strong was that cultural tradition that when they grew up, they themselves would cut their own daughters. And I had no idea how little the world was really doing to respond. But I had a moment when I could not look away. And it was a simple moment. It was meeting these two beautiful little girls in Lalibela in northern Ethiopia, and their names are Mekdes and Tinabab. And they were trying to sell me saints' knuckles, which of course were genuine saints' knuckles, and you know, were over 1,000 years old, still there. And we hung out together, and throughout the day we were around and about, and at the end of the day I had my fingers out and they were holding my fingers, and we were walking. I was going back to my guest house, and I wanted to take them and go to their parents and beg and plead and say, don't cut your daughters. Please do not allow these vital, wonderful little girls to go through this thing. And I knew I had no right, no knowledge, no agency. I was a Westerner interfering. But I made a vow that day that I would walk away from these two little girls, but only if I spent my life walking to woods trying to end female genital cutting. And this keeps me going. When I returned to London, I looked for the big NGOs, the Amnesties, the big people doing stuff, so I could join them and volunteer with them and work on FGM. It was incredible, the silence I met. I did find one NGO. You saw Forward being interviewed there, and I volunteered with them for 6 months. But actually, what I didn't find was something that reflected the importance and what the urgency is behind this issue. And so the Orchid Project was formed. Back in August, I met some of you at Kitzbühel, and I think you'll agree I was pretty passionate and I was quite concerned, and I got that across, but I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know where to go next. I'm here to tell you today that I know a lot more now, and the last 9 months have been absolutely incredible. Thanks to your support and the support of One Life, in January I travelled to Senegal and the Gambia, and what I saw there was absolutely incredible. I volunteered with an amazing organisation called Tostan, and again you saw one of their people speaking on the screen. And what Tostan have done and worked with communities over the last 15 years to do is end FGC. And it's profound and it's simple, and it happens like this. An entire community comes together. They choose to undergo human rights education that goes on for 2 years. This isn't a quick fix. This is something that takes time. They use pictures, they use conversation. Africa is an oral tradition. They use non-stop the community's voice to talk about what is important to them. The people in the room who are the natural change agents, the ones who've gone through FGM, who've gone through difficulties, are the voices that come out and again and again. And what happens after 6 months of human rights discussion, after 6 months of discussion about health and hygiene, after 6 months of learning more about problem solving and literacy and numeracy, is something so incredible and profound. And it's this: they abandon cutting. This is, I'm sorry, I'm not a photographer. This is the best picture I could take. This is in the Gambia, in a place called Saanajai. And this is a drama that these women are doing to a collected audience of over 600 people. And what I witnessed here was 26 villagers coming together to say they would not cut their daughters anymore. Of those 26 villages, each village brought another 5 of their intermarrying villages, so that 100 villagers here at this ceremony saw that the end to female genital cutting was happening in that region. It was absolutely incredible. And I think what for me was even more important is from 1997, when there was the first abandonment in Senegal, to 2005, 173 communities abandoned. From 2005 to now, 5,100 communities have abandoned. So the growth is exponential. And it works because each community takes the word out to its surrounding communities. Across West Africa, we've seen 5,300 communities end. And the reason it's so profound and simple is the entire community has to shift together. There's no point in just one woman saying, I know it's going to harm my daughter, but I can't leave her uncut. What happens is the entire community comes together. It's witnessed as a ceremony, and then that village takes it on out. So I've been to see what works, and for me as an ex-business person, coming across an idea that we can scale, that we can replicate, is just incredible news. And I want to make a film with Nancy so we can actually show what is happening out there and how we can work together to end FGC. So, in the last 9 months, Orchid, how are we going to respond? What are we going to do? 3 simple things. Firstly, we are going to partner with delivery agencies like Tostan, who are working with communities. At the end of the day, we can sit here in Denmark and talk about it, but unless the communities abandon, nothing will change. So, we have our first partner. We're looking for others, one in Indonesia, one in East Africa. Secondly, we're going to communicate. Things change when you communicate. And very simply, we need to get the story out about what is happening. Otherwise, all we do is stay shocked in the horror, frankly. And lastly, we're going to advocate. I firmly believe there are some big levers out there that we need to push or pull, or whatever you do with a lever. We need to do it. There are power systems that exist so that we can move them. The UN is there, the WHO is there, governments are there. And actually, you look at how HIV was a taboo issue 20 years ago. The $16 billion that now goes into HIV came from somewhere. So the advocacy is vitally important. Why is Orchid different? Well, we are standing here saying that there can be an end to female genital cutting within the next generation. And people look at me as if I'm mad when I say that. Until I say foot binding ended in 12 years. If a practice like that can end through a very similar program, this too can end. And by the way, this is happening in Africa. The change is happening in Africa. It's not the West imposing this change. These are communities themselves changing. So, a little bit more about what Orchid is actually going to do. And should you choose to give us some money, some more money, this is what we're going to do with it. I want to introduce you to an amazing woman who I met in Sanjay called Marietu. And Marietu was married at the age of 13, and she had her first daughter at the age of 14. And when her daughter was 3 years old, her daughter was cut and she died. When Marietu was 18, she gave birth to her second daughter. And when she and I talked about it, and her daughter's name is Ajikumba. I should say was Ajikumba, because when her daughter was 7, she also went through FGC, and she died from it too. What happened next is Tostan, our partner organisation, went to Marietu's village. And working with her and the entire village, and with her voice, that community decided to abandon FGC, and they declared. And Marietu now is an outreach worker. She's a volunteer for Tostan, and she goes from village to village to talk about why she has chosen not to do FGC anymore. But it's actually quite incredible to think it through. She has to walk. She walks or she takes the bus. And so far, she has talked to the entire front row. And you are probably 30 miles away. But she's got to all of you, and she can't get further. We're going to do something very, very simple. We're going to buy Marietu motorbike and the fuel and the maintenance to last her for 2 years, so she can reach to probably, we hope, the 3rd or 4th row. And there are more Marietus. This is, well, I call them the Hope Team. This is 5 people. We're choosing to buy 8 motorcycles, but these are 5 of the people who would go out. And they're in all different parts of Senegal and the Gambia. So you can see these people going out, telling their story, saying why they have chosen to end FGC. These are the change agents. These are the voices we need to back. If you made a contribution to Orchid, it would go towards all of our work. It wouldn't just go to these projects. It would go to us finding partners elsewhere. It would go to us trying to replicate this. I'm sorry, I'm not talking into the microphone properly. It would go towards some of our communication work. Some of your money tonight would go to Nancy and the work she does. And also, it would go to our advocacy. I said there are big levers. For some reason, this is a slide with 3 people beginning with C, with Bill Clinton, with David Cameron, with CNN. It's part of showing that actually, the more we talk about this taboo, the more we raise it up the agenda, the more we prioritise it, things really can change, but they don't shift alone. So our advocacy work is absolutely vital. I went recently to Geneva to the World Health Association, and frankly, that cost me a flight to go. The flight was £100. The impact we had, I believe, was phenomenal. What I mean by that is it doesn't matter how little you give, please, any little amount would do. Of course, we wouldn't say no to a little bit more. The motos, by the way, each moto is going to cost us 32,000 Danish kroner.